just for the panel, I plan to turn my camera off and mute myself during your presentation, just so that the panel and the moderator, the three of you, are more of the focus.
Sounds good.
Hi, everyone. We'll start in just a few minutes. We're just waiting for a few more people to come in. Laura, I think we could probably start.
Okay. I just really wanted to take a quick second to thank everyone for attending. I'm really excited that NEFA is able to offer additional programming, really to connect us all throughout this year. So I hope you enjoy this topic on emerging technology. I'm really going to pass it over to Chad, but welcome.
Thanks, Laura. Again, welcome everyone. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. We have an excellent program planned for you today on emerging tech in equipment finance. We have Ray Wisbowski with IDS as our moderator, Angelina Frimpong with Equipment Finance, and then Eldon Richards is the Chief Technology Officer with IDS. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our gracious sponsor, IDS, and Ray has a little item here to share with you.
Hi and welcome. Thank you all for joining the session today. I'd just like to take a short moment and share a little bit about IDS.
You might think IDS Cloud is only built for big finance firms, but it's so flexible and scalable, it works for everyone, including you, the independent, the startup, the finance firm with big aspirations. It's a true SaaS offering built for the cloud, in the cloud. It can be deployed fast and affordably. You only pay for what you use. From 2 users to hundreds. Moving to the cloud is simple. All you need is an internet connection. Are you ready to grow? IDS Cloud is built for you. Discover why agile lenders of all sizes are moving to IDS Cloud. Learn more here or email us at cloud@idsgrp.com.
So thank you for participating today. We certainly appreciate our distinguished panelists that will be sharing as we get going here. IDS is a proud sponsor of NEFA and participant and member, and are looking forward to this dialogue and interaction. So with that said, Angelina, over to you.
Thanks, Ray. Let me share my screen here. Please do let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the webinar once again. My name is Angelina. I lead the data team in Amor Equipment Finance. I have been with Amor for about 3 years now. Today's on the agenda is big data analytics for equipment financing. So we would want to discuss what big data actually is, some characteristics of it, how it relates to our industry, some use cases and some tools that you can use to build these analytics. So we start with defining what big data is. The term big data, big actually, what does that mean? Is it that the data is big or what is it? So big data refers to just large volumes of data. What that means is, let's say, for example, you're sending an email. You want to attach a 10 megabyte file. For an email, it will go through. If you attach, let's say, 2 gigabytes file, it will fail. At that moment, it's a big data for email, right? So the term big is relative. But what we want to discuss here is not about emails or anything like that. We are trying to refer to data that is generated every day from our constant use of tools like phones, computers, everything that we use around us. It generates some type of information that we can process. There are some characteristics of big data. So it has 5 characteristics. Earlier on, when the concept of big data came around, there were only 3, they call it 3 V's. Now they call them the 5 V's. Now what that means is big data has a volume of data, which is very huge. That's why we call it big. Now there's also a variety of data that you can generate. So we can have data from CSVs, from media, songs, videos, all that kind of stuff are also types of data. Then the value of data, right? The fact that you are generating data does not mean it adds value. So it's up to you, the user or the company, to extract some useful information out of the data that's generated. And also there is velocity. That is the speed at which data is generated, right? So right now, let's say today you have something on your phone, let's say one picture on your phone. As time goes on, you realize that your memory is getting full. Your gigabytes is running up because every single day you take a picture. So all that kind of information is just the speed at which we generate that information. That is another characteristic of big data. Then there's a veracity, which is, I would say, noise of data. Not every data you generate is useful, right? So with veracity, you're able to determine the inconsistencies in data that you are generating to understand what is useful, what is noise, to separate all that kind of inconsistencies in the data. So why big data, right? For equipment financing, why I think we believe we need big data is to make smarter and effective business decisions. Another one is to optimize business operations and customer behavior. We deal with customers all the time, so having some kind of information to get you ahead of the time to understand what your customers needs and provide them products that suits their needs is very useful. Also, it reduces cost. Why does big data reduce cost? For example, let's say you build a module, right, that is telling you what your risk is. Because you know your risk, you don't venture into something. So with that said, it will help you to kind of reduce how much risk you're putting out there. So risk can come with cost. So once you're able to reduce that risk, it reduces your cost. Also, big data analytics are mostly done on cloud. So the cost of servers and the cost of infrastructure can be reduced using big data. And also to produce next generation tools and services, as I explained before. So if you're customer centric, you want to know the feedback of your customers. Once you know the feedback of your customers, you will be able to provide them the best service that will help them promote your business for you. So when we talk about big data analytics, there are 4 things that you usually do in terms of analytics. The first one is descriptive. What's happening in my business now? And that is based off of historical information that you have captured from your customers, your brokers, or your vendors, every information you have in the past. What is happening in my business now? It will help you to make some decisions. But then you also want to make more futuristic decisions. So with prescriptive analytics, you use your historical data. Then we have the diagnostic. Okay, currently this is happening in my business. Why did it happen? You should have data in your system to help you diagnose how that is done. And we will use some machine learning tools to be able to extract that kind of analytics to understand why. Now then we come with the predictive. What if? What is likely to happen, right? How do you determine what is likely to happen in the future? From a data scientist point of view, you have some data, you have some algorithms that you can build. We are not here to actually discuss the technical part of building that predictive modeling, but with data and the amount of data that we extract every day, let's say you want to, for example, you have a credit. You can use a customer spending behavior online. A customer's credit information is always around. But what other things is the customer doing or the broker doing that you think is going to affect your business? So all that information we gather around can help us make that kind of what if analysis. Then after you understand what if and what is likely to happen, what do you need to do to prevent it? Or what do you need to do to achieve it? It's not always bad, right? What do you need to achieve it? So that is a prescriptive analytics. So there are 4 different things that you can do with big data. You can do the descriptive, which is using the historical data. You can use the predictive and the prescriptive and diagnostic. And then once we understand what kind of analytics we are trying to do, what kind of tools are there? What kind of tools are available to us to be able to achieve this goal of analytics? It starts with, do we want to do the things real time or in batch? So some of the tools that you can use to do real-time processing of this big data, because let's say every day I'm on my internet, I'm browsing, you come to a More Equipment website, you are browsing on our website, and I want to analyze some data from you. Do I want to wait until you are gone, or I want to process the data in real time? So we have tools like Spark. It's a way of analyzing real-time data. And then you have other tools that you can use to integrate the data into your systems. I just mentioned a few things like SSIS Talent. Those are some of them are free, others are paid for. And we have the Splunk. You want to be able to analyze the logs, every information or every activity that goes on your system. You want to be able to monitor it, right? And then we have the data warehousing, because where do you host all this information? You can host them on your, servers in your system, or you can host them in the cloud. If you want to use your own servers, that is good. But you can also host them on the cloud like Azure, AWS, and all that kind of stuff. And then we have the Kafka. So Kafka is a messaging system. So let's say you have more than, so there's a computer A here, computer B here, computer C here. How do you send messages across the systems to understand what has happened on computer A? You want to use the Kafka tool to do that. And then we have the Hadoop, which processes the data. The fact that you have data stored does not mean it's easily accessible, right? So you want to be able to have a Hadoop to be able to process the data so that if somebody wants to retrieve the data, it would get the data fast because the data is huge and large. Retrieval can be very long and lengthy if you don't have the proper systems. So Hadoop is one way of, integrating all these big data tools, data, storing them and sharing them on other analytics platform. And then we have the NoSQL, which, this is also a new, I would say, for those technical guys that know SQL, there's something called NoSQL, which is almost like trying to process unstructured data. When I say structured and unstructured, your files from your CSV, they're all structured data because you see the columns, you see the patterns, but you can have a message from like, I would say, a log, and you wouldn't actually understand the structure of the data. That is when the NoSQL stuff come into play. And then we have the analytics. So with data, you want to be able to present it to users such that they will understand exactly what you are trying to talk about. Tell a story with the data. That is where the analysis come into play. We have things like Tableau, Quick View, and all that kind of stuff to help you to visualize the data that you have. So these are some of the tools that you can use to build big data analytics. So in terms of our equipment financing industry, there are some use cases that we can leverage big data for. An example is generating leads. I'll use my my company as an example because let's say that you have a website where customers, or you have a CRM tool where you have a lot of leads in your CRM, but then timing is necessary. Reaching out to the best prospect at a particular point in time is very necessary. So you understanding their browsing activities on your website and understanding what they are looking for at a particular point in time can help you reach out to them in time, right? Once you reach out to them in time, you may probably be able to convert a prospect to actually an applicant, So that is one way to use big data for generating leads. And there is a customer sentiment analysis. I'll use our marketing feedbacks as an example. Let's say we deploy a tool for our vendors, our brokers, and we expect some feedback. With sentiment analysis, you're able to understand whether the comment or the feedback that came is positive or negative or neutral. For example, let's say this webinar, after this feedback, one of you would say, oh, it was very informative. That sounds positive, right? Somebody say, well, it was okay. That is neutral. So with that kind of feedback that you generate from your system, you're able to actually determine how good or how bad something rolled out, right? So you're able to do that kind of sentiment analysis to understand sometimes the emotions of the viewer or the customer. So that is another way to use big data in equipment financing. And then predicting risk. So you can predict risk by saying that, okay, I want to build a module. I have a customer asking for a loan or equipment finance or lease, whatever. What is the risk involved? We have data everywhere. We have the FICO score, credit score, we have everything, bank statement and all that. But then having all that does not tell you that the customer will pay back the loan or whatever. So it's up to you to build like a module that will help you to predict ahead of time because of the past business this customer did with us, and because of variable A, B, and C, it's likely, right? It's likely that the customer may default. So you're able to do such analysis to reduce how much risk you are taking in as a organization. And the last item is automating credit underwriting. So that is very simple because simple but not in a sense that there are some processes that are repetitive. a credit processor or a credit analyst would take a document, review A, B, C, because once you look at this, you want to make a decision that you can code all that into a machine learning module to be able to automate some of these processes for you. So it actually adds some kind of speed to the credit underwriting department. So yeah, these are some of the use cases that the equipment financing industry can leverage big data for. With that said, I think I'll bring my presentation to an end and I will let Eldon take over.
Thank you, Angelina. Let me get my screen up now as well while this poll is going on.
Yeah, and while Eldon's doing that, please take a moment and look at the poll question that is here. Thank you, Angelina, for your presentation. Please fill out the poll. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. I'm very excited to have the chance to talk with everybody today. And this is really a topic that I've got a lot of passion for. I've been working in technology for over 25 years, and that has been in a variety of different companies. And throughout that history, I've seen a lot of technology companies talk about the value of data. And so Angelina was just talking to us about big data, and we're now in an era where the amount of data that is being generated and collected is astonishing. Right? In the last 2 years, 90% of the data that has ever been gathered was gathered in the last 2 years. And what we're seeing now every day, 2.5 quintillion bytes of data is created. That's a number that I don't think any of us really think about. It's 25 with 17 zeros after it is being created every day. So it's a mind-blowing amount. But what I've seen in my career is everybody's been talking about the value of data, but I've seen companies really struggle to capitalize on that. And the technologies I'm going to talk about today, in my opinion, for the first time in a really big way, can really unlock the data. I'm going to take that. Can really unlock the power of data for businesses. So for today, I realize that in the audience today, there are probably a whole spectrum of backgrounds. Some people who work in technology and will be very familiar with the technologies that I'll talk about. Other people that may dabble in this and maybe have made decisions to purchase some of these technologies, but don't get deep into those technologies. And others that might be learning about some of these things or have heard about them, but don't know a lot about what they could do for their businesses or how they work. So I'll try to keep this very engaging and address the needs of the various types of backgrounds in the audience today. So for that, I will start with some key terms, but I really want to focus on what's the impact in the world today, and really try to bring this to equipment financing companies and what we can do with these technologies, and how would we go about even approaching that for today. So first with key terms. As background, I'll talk about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is a very broad topic, and it's been around for a really long time, right? Modern computing started really in the 1940s. Artificial intelligence started in the 1950s, really, the way we look at it. The first neural networks were created back then. And back in those days, it was already imagined that we were not very far away from computers being able to be very human and think like humans, and would not need programmers, but they could learn for themselves. And looking back now, 80 years later, we clearly see that they were not as close as they thought, but we do see a lot of progress. And we've seen various waves of artificial intelligence in those 8 decades since the technology first created. And today I'll talk about the latest of those and really some of the breakthroughs that it's creating. Before doing that, though, let me talk about another big field, data science. And big data, I feel, is really a big part of that. This is using data and statistics and a lot of the tools that Angelina was just talking about to get insights from data. And there is overlap with artificial intelligence in that with data science, there are a whole set of practices where we use experts that can drill in and understand data and see the patterns. And there are a whole other set of patterns where the computer can do that for us. And that's in the realm of artificial intelligence, or the overlap of these. Within that overlap, there's a type of computing called machine learning. And machine learning is about having algorithms and models that can analyze data and see patterns and make predictions and recommendations, for example. So there was a slide in Angelina's deck that talked about predictions and prescriptive big data that fits also within the realm of machine learning. Now, machine learning, by the way, has also been around since the 1950s. So this is not a new concept, but our ability to do anything meaningful with it is pretty new. And that has been created by a subfield of that called deep learning. With deep learning, all we're really talking about are really, really big neural networks. And a neural network is a computer model that can basically is using a lot of math. It uses calculus and it uses linear algebra to look at data, even if that data is not mathematical or numeric. It could be language or pictures, but it uses those techniques with deep learning in a very, very big way to quote unquote understand it. Computers, of course, don't understand data the way humans do, but we fake it, right, with these models. And deep learning really, though, is the thing that has driven the current wave of artificial intelligence, and in my opinion, is the technology that is finally really unlocking the value of data. So let's talk about the impact, of this. And I'm sure most of you have heard about, fourth wave, right? Fourth wave of the Industrial Revolution. And I realize that the equipment finance companies are not industrial companies, but bear with me and I'll show the relevance on this. The idea of the fourth wave is essentially that since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, with people moving into cities and using steam engines and water power to automate work, that was a transformative event. And I say event, it was spread over a long period of time, over 100 years, that really changed humanity. From agrarian societies where we were all spread out and everything was made by hand, everything was custom, to people moving into cities and where we started getting repetitive things. The cost of goods went down dramatically with that first wave. Second wave is mass production, assembly line, electricity. This is where gasoline engines. This is where the car came through. And you think about how different the world is now. Freeways and airplanes and so forth that have come out of the second wave, and how different our life is from the days of Charles Dickens in the first wave, right? That have come from that. So again, a very transformative wave that came from the second part of the Industrial Revolution. Third wave really began in the 1960s and has not really ended yet, but it's computers and automation, robotics. We wouldn't be having this meeting today without this third wave, right? We couldn't have these digital technologies, and most of us wouldn't be in the line of work that we're in today without the third wave. And this is another one that's a couple of generations essentially that we've seen so far for this wave, and now we're entering into the fourth wave of these the cyber physical systems, artificial intelligence, and improved interface between computers and people, where we can use augmented intelligence and really have computers take on a lot more of the thinking tasks that we have traditionally always had to do. The difference between the fourth wave and the previous waves is that it's coming so fast. While the first, second, and third waves took several generations, we are expecting the same level of change and impact to the world that the other waves have had but in a single generation, in a 20 to 25 year time period. So it's a huge, huge change for us. Now, while this is talking about industry, certainly those of us who are working in more information-centric businesses, like financial institutions, technology companies like I work in, we'll see this even faster. Right, we'll be the early adopters of this and have the ability to take advantage of that. I would also say that it's important for us in the leasing field that we understand that this is going on, because that can have a real impact in terms of what companies can do with their assets, depending on the types of assets that they're buying, because of the potential for disruption that they're leasing, because of the potential of disruption as we see this fourth wave go on. So basically, gigantic impact and coming really fast. So let's talk about why that's happening and why is it happening now. And as I mentioned earlier, in my career, there's been this promise for a long time, and we haven't really seen it realized. We've seen it realized in small ways, but why do we believe that it's going to come faster right now? And that comes from the fact that there have been some big macro trends in technology that have come together at the same time to enable this. One of those is big data that we just talked about, and really the cost and ability for us to deal with big data, to store it and to process it, has come down dramatically. Right, so I'm old enough to remember, floppy disks when even before they were hard, right? They would hold just maybe a couple books worth of data, on them, to the first hard drives, to now where we talk about data like I did earlier in quintillions of bytes, right, and petabytes and higher. So that's one big part of it, because for a computer to do things that are somewhat intelligent, they need a lot more data than humans do. And so this needed to happen first. Second one is cloud computing. And what cloud computing has done for computing is similar to what big data has done for data. It's brought the cost down dramatically for us to do computing, and has allowed companies of any size, or individuals even, to have access to computing power that's way beyond what we would ever be able to physically buy. And computing costs have come down drastically as well. So I have here in my office next to me a home computer that's built for doing machine learning. It's got 2,000 processors in it, and that's affordable now. Anybody could buy that for a gaming system. But if I want to do powerful AI, deep learning type things, I would go to the cloud, where I could have 1 million processors working on my data. The next one is deep neural networks. I mentioned earlier that machine learning and AI have been around for a long time, since the 1950s, and we have seen advances throughout those decades. But with the cost of data and the cost of computing coming down, for the first time, we've been able to start building large models that can do really interesting things, like talk to people and like drive cars. So there's been a whole new science around how do we make these gigantic neural networks work. And just for those who aren't familiar with neural networks, one thing I like to compare it to, for anybody who has done a statistics class or used this in Excel, where you have a bunch of dots in a scatter plot, you're trying to find the line that best fits those. It's a regression analysis. Machine learning is basically doing regression analysis, but on steroids. And deep learning is machine learning on steroids. So if I'm trying to draw a line to fit a bunch of dots, basically what I am doing is using math to find two parameters, a slope and an intercept, and that will define my line. And so I could use as little as 2 data points, but if I had 10, 15, 100, and that would give me a better chance of having a line that really could be used for predictions. When it comes to a deep neural network, I'm now talking about models that don't learn 2 parameters, but millions, and sometimes now billions of parameters. So these are really huge. The science of getting that all to work is really a new one, and it's one of the things that's caused this explosion. So over on the right, I've got a couple of charts to illustrate the impact of these. The top one, this NeurIPS papers. NeurIPS is the leading AI conference for academics. This is where all the PhDs in related fields get together, and you see an exponential growth in the number of papers that are going in. And while it looks flatter just because it's on the other scale of the submitted, the accepted papers are growing at an exponential scale as well. In 2018 was the last time they just did open subscription to that conference, because it sold out in 12 minutes. It's gotten that hot. So starting in 2019, they use a you sign up, and it's a lottery system, right, to be able to get in, because it has become so popular, and it's because it's able to drive so much value. The other chart, this hype cycle, some of you may be familiar with Gartner. Gartner does market research for technology, and they're famous for these hype cycles. You see the curve here with all the dots on it. And they do this for upcoming technologies in different fields. And in this case, this is about general emerging technologies. And they basically help us see how fast our technology is coming, and how much they might be overhyped, how likely they are to actually provide value. The latest one that was for general emerging technologies that was published was middle of last year. That's the one I'm showing you here. And there are 30 technologies on there. 11 of those are deep learning based. They are different facets of deep learning. Another 4 or 5 of those are enablers of that, and another 3 or 4 of those are dependent on that. So most of what we're seeing right now in terms of new technology is really being driven by this huge wave coming with the 4th wave of the Industrial Revolution, driven by deep learning and artificial intelligence. So let's talk about what it can do for us in equipment leasing, right? These are talking about impact to the world, great, but what am I going to do in my business? And there's really 2 kind of key areas that deep learning is opening up for us in ways that we really couldn't access before. One area of those is interacting better with human beings. So computers, historically, you need to have somebody who can think and talk like a computer. You use a programming language, or you use applications and put data in tables or in fields and do things in the computer's way. And with AI, we can now start having the computers interact more on our terms, using English instead of Java, and present information and react to humans. So recommendation systems is one of those. And you think about this when you go on to Amazon and you are looking at things, or you choose to buy something, it recommends other products to you. What's actually happening behind the scenes is it's using a machine learning algorithm. It's looking at patterns of buyers that look at those goods and other things that you might have looked at. It may have your demographics that plugs into there, and it's making intelligent recommendations, hopefully intelligent recommendations about other things that might be useful to you. Chatbots is another one. These are something that you can now essentially buy off the shelf and use in your support systems. But the technology behind them is actually pretty remarkable. If you think about human language and being able to communicate with a computer, with the old way of having to program this, it was simply impossible. If you think about even just like a tweet-sized chat, 140 characters, the number of possible tweets that you could have in that size is beyond what we can imagine. Take all the atoms in the known universe, and for every one of those atoms, turn it into an entire universe, so that you've got that many atoms per atom, and then do that again. That's the number of chats you could have, 100 or messages, single messages you could have with just a tweet-sized chat, 140 characters. And why does that matter? Is that if I were trying to write a program to interface with a person and just via text, I have to deal with that kind of variability of all the things that somebody could send to me that I might be able to understand or not. And it's just simply impossible to do. Amazingly, deep learning is able to see patterns well enough and fill in the blanks, even though it can't represent all of those possibilities, and still come back with intelligent responses. So the first areas of things that it can do are interactions with people. Those are the first two use cases. The other areas are when a decision might need to utilize lots of different data signals. And so again, overlapping with what Angelina just talked about, when we think about big data, we're not just talking about its volume or its size, but the number of sources that are coming in. So we're making credit decisioning, doing credit decisions. We can be looking at a company's history. We can be looking at the financials themselves. We could be looking at the news, right? And what's happening to the industry that they're in and so forth. So to make a better decision, more data can be useful in a lot of those cases. So deep learning is very helpful for that as well. Another one of those that's kind of doing decisioning for us is robotic process automation. Some of you may have heard about that. These are technologies that automate mostly repetitive tasks. Now, automation's been around for a long time. Think about if you do a macro in Excel, it's automating steps that you would have done in Excel by yourself, and it speeds things up. So that type of technology has been around for decades. It's really what computer programs do, right, is automation. What's different about robotic process automation today, and a new term called intelligent automation, is that they're embedding artificial intelligence to be able to be more robust than something that you would have to program like a macro. And so they're doing things like watching the screens that are coming up, and if they detect that something has changed, maybe one of the applications that you're doing automation on has been upgraded and one of the buttons has moved. What the promise of current and next generation robotic process automation and intelligent automation tools is to be able to adapt to that automatically, so you don't have to go and change it. So those are more back office type things, and all four of these are examples of deep learning enabled technology that you can buy and implement, that you don't have to have the machine learning engineers or data scientists on your staff to do, because that requires scale. So these are things that you can buy. Yeah, let me get to the next slide. So let's talk about what it takes to be successful with this. And this is, these three factors are what it takes to be an organization that can create AI. One of those is lots and lots of data. And people ask me a lot, well, how much data do I need? And unfortunately, the answer always is it depends. It really depends on what you're trying to solve. If I'm trying to do something relatively simple, like come up with house prices like they do on Zillow, that would be on the easier side of machine learning. I might need, say, millions of data points to do that. If I'm doing something hard like driving a car or chatting with a human being in an intelligent way, I might need the whole internet, right? I might need a huge amount of data to do that. So, but having data and being able to work with data is an important part. Second one is deep industry knowledge. And so we see a lot of AI startups coming and a lot of promise coming from those. The problem that we sometimes see with those, though, is that they don't understand the nuances within a given industry and the complexities that their models need to adapt for. So that's a second pillar that's really important in creating AI or machine learning. And the third one is the technical capability to work with these. So this is the knowledge and understanding of applying these deep learning models or other AI models. And if you can bring all three of those together, you can do some really exciting cutting edge stuff and really unlock the value of the data as I've been talking about. The issue that we often have is it's hard to find all three of these in a single company. Right? A large, like a big tech company, a Google or a Facebook, has all three of these for their industries at least, but it's harder for smaller companies to do that. So how do we approach that? Generally speaking, this is where vendors can come into place or consortiums can come into place, where we can share data and pool knowledge and technical capability in order to do the more interesting things. And so my recommendation generally to companies, depending on size and depending on scale or the complexity of what they might try to implement when it comes to AI, is for smaller companies, buy what's available. For more medium-sized companies, it would make sense to partner with others in the industry or with vendors that serve your industry to create these. And for the very largest organizations, it would often make sense to make proprietary. It might make sense to make proprietary models for your own company. So that's the overview I wanted to share. And Ray, I'll turn the time back to you so that we can maybe do some questions and answers on these topics.
Fantastic. And Blair has put up our next polling question, a really good polling question about new business volume. So I think you'll be interested to see what other participants are saying about this particular topic. So please take a moment and begin. The first answer, there's going to be great disparity. So keep answering that polling question. Eldon, thank you. You can see why IDS actively sought to bring in somebody like Eldon, who brings a lot of technical know-how into our ranks. And Angelina, thank you so much for your contribution talking about big data. We'd like to transition now into a Q&A section of the webinar. We have some questions that I've written for the panel, and we really want to also hear from you. So as Chad is put into the chat area, feel free to ask your questions, and I'll weave those into the questions that we're going to work on right now. So, both of you talked about how data is being applied to business, and I think that's really probably the question that we all are trying to wrap our head around. It's how do we take all these really fancy, very deep technical concepts that you think Google sinks a data center to the bottom of the ocean so that it's cooler and uses less, filled with nitrogen, so it doesn't have oxygen erosion of the component parts. How do you compare something like that to what we're talking about in equipment finance? I think one of the more practical examples that we can start with is, we've seen a lot of people move to remote work. So in addition to big data and the other technologies that we've discussed, how do you see cloud, that broader concept of cloud impacting the equipment finance industry? And Angelina, I'll ask you to be the first to chime in on this.
Yeah, in terms of cloud solutions with remote work, working for a more technology-enabled company, we're already adapting some cloud, private and public cloud services into our operations. So moving into remote work wasn't new to most of us. I mean, it was new to a few, but we were able to adapt really quickly. So for the most, systems that we ran for our day-to-day operation, most of them were hosted on some private clouds. So whether you were in the office or you were at home, you were still able to do exactly the same things you were doing. It's just that, working in the office and working at home is a whole different setting. So adjusting to that was the difficult part. But to get the services and the processes working as it used to be before COVID hit, there wasn't really much a difference. So I believe that we were able to really adapt really quickly with the experiences in services like AWS and all the kind of cloud computing that my team had implemented. It was very easy to adjust and change.
Yeah. No, we've heard that from others. You had to adapt, right? You had to change. We did see some companies out of the gate that didn't have the technology in place and had to quickly move to put technology in place to keep their business running, and others who were able to quickly just almost like flipping a switch, move over. So
right.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Eldon, what about you? What do you think about how do you see cloud impacting the equipment finance industry in general?
Yeah, so let's start with the pandemic and then talk about it more broadly as well. So we certainly saw that last year, as the realization of the size and impact of the pandemic swept the world, and everybody pivoted to work at home and dealing with that. I mean, that really put accelerated the digital transformations in a really big way. And one of the things that we saw with some of our customers that have these the majority of their systems running in their data centers, we ran into situations where they couldn't get people in and out of those data centers to maintain them. And sometimes they couldn't get them into work, and if they weren't enabled to work from home, they saw some real disruption until they could get those issues solved. And so one of the things that we really started seeing was a lot of organizations looking to their technology partners, whether it was Zoom like we're using right now, or Microsoft Teams, or other products like that allow us to continue to collaborate and work together remotely, to how do I ensure that my systems will remain available, my core systems remain available and working. And I think that really got people thinking a lot more about the cloud, where that can be spread out. We can not just deal with this pandemic, but deal with other future natural disasters and so forth. And so we really are seeing an acceleration of interest, in that as well. And then certainly, to the kind of the follow-on, Ray, the impact to cloud on equipment finance, beyond being a key enabling technology for the digital transformation, for the robust running of our businesses. It also enables some of the things that we were just talking about, right? The ability to store and leverage these huge volumes of data that can get after things that we historically haven't been able to do on the smaller individual scales that we've done.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, Eldon and I have barely met each other. He joined our company right as the pandemic was getting going, and so it's there's other people on our executive team that I have not met in person, it just blows my mind. But we operate like we operate well without ever having that physical connection. I'm going to switch to a question that came in through the chat from Scott Wheeler about predictive analytics. And I think this is fascinating. I mean, both of you talked in part about, giant data sets, finding patterns within the data set, and then what does that mean, right? So if I'm using all of this math to get to this. So, Scott would say there's specific buying patterns. Commercial equipment finance and leasing industry has tremendous amount of data, but few companies are using the data successfully to predict future buying patterns of organizations. And the question is, do you see companies trying to accelerate their predictive analytics? Angelina, let's with your big data understanding, let's address that question to you.
Yeah, I think I believe majority of companies will start to implement, predictive analytics to depict patterns, because as Eldon said, we generate a lot of data. And most companies, not most of companies in our industry, but other industries have used it and it's given them success. Now we can leverage how they have used it, to generate that success, and see how it relates to our industry, and try to come up with ways that we can implement it effectively. So I have this review that I read from, I don't remember the name of the site, but it's almost like any company that does not implement the use of all the big data and the predictive analytics in the future, they can't compete, because a lot of people are leveraging the tools, a lot of industries. So in our equipment financing industry, we have to see which of these predictive modeling is suitable for what we are trying to achieve. What are we trying to do? We are trying to get customers to come to us for financing. What do we need to do? What is our business module? Once we understand our business module, we'll be able to understand how to effectively use this predictive analytics to be able to do what we need to achieve. So, like I said, let's say you want to understand credit. because you have data, you just don't go with FICO score or PayNet score, but you want to go with more data such that you'll be able to, understand the customer better. Let's say their bank statement is there, but what is their buying power? How much are they spending online? Are they always shopping? Are they always not shopping? You want to understand that kind of data, so that once you're trying to put the module together, you'll be able to effectively know how the future will look like. So I believe that for equipment financing industry, I believe most of us will start using it well. My company have started. Maybe we are not there yet, but I believe that is something that we all have to adapt to be able to make
Maybe
smarter
everybody
decisions.
has to hire a data scientist like you.
I guess.
She's
Yeah.
making offers that her starting pay is $1 million, and so following on that thought process, are there, Eldon, I'll address this question to you. Are there other technologies we should be considering right now that reshape the industry in light of COVID? I'm thinking of, you talked about AI and RPA, but what about blockchain? Things that have been buzzwords leading up to the pandemic, and are these things are really just accelerating it and going to help us get through and on the other side of everything?
Yeah, so if I think about the various emerging technologies that could have impact, right? We've just been talking about big data, ML, AI, mentioned a little bit about our RPA, as one of those, and those I think are very relevant in this industry. Blockchain has got a lot of press and buzz, and by the way, all of these get a lot of hype, and sometimes they live up to the hype, and sometimes they don't. When it comes to blockchain, we are seeing adoption of that, but I think that there's more hype than there is delivery or reality there, and it's because it suffers from two problems. One is that it's making data public, but it's encrypted, right? It's a shared ledger, public ledger, and so it leverages our current best in class encryption capabilities. But one of the other big emerging technologies that we're watching right now is quantum computing, and there's massive breakthroughs that are coming through that. And for those who aren't watching this, quantum computing will change cryptography completely. And everything that's really hard to break right now becomes very easy when that comes of age. And we're looking at probably a decade or so for us to hit that point. So I'm not putting a lot of my eggs in the blockchain bucket right now. It's partly because of that. It's not future proof yet. For that. The other is that it's got limited scalability. It just becomes so expensive to run really large blockchain. So it's there, and it's coming, and I think that there are some good use cases for that. I would just be a little bit more cautious about it. One other though that I think is really big is Internet of Things, right? And so IoT, or as we call that, I think can be very applicable here, and we are seeing demand for this as well as to track usage data. And so if you think about back to Scott's question that he posted about he mentioned the individual buying patterns, right, of consumers and businesses, and certainly big data and ML are great ways to get after that and to understand those. But we could also do that for usage patterns, right? And IoT is a great way to collect that information. So that's another big one that I would say is very relevant to us and could be really big for us. So.
Eldon, I'm going to follow on with one question that came in about the fourth revolution, since you brought that up. And I think this is a quick one. Which data streams do you see being the most important to equipment finance today and tomorrow?
Which data streams?
Yeah, which data streams?
Yeah, so good. So I mean, we have. I'd say there's a bunch. So there's the ones that are easy for us to get at right now, right? So payments, right? And what's the pattern of those and the timing of those? But I would say there's also other public information that is important about the companies themselves. And I mentioned taking in news feeds. There's I don't know what the current percentage is right now, but a huge percentage of trades on Wall Street are done by bots today, right? And that's been increasing for decades. Those are utilizing combination of the financial data, the financials of the companies, as well as the signals from the trades themselves. But some of those are also watching Twitter, right, or watching the Wall Street Journal, and when they see mentions, they can understand and utilize those. So so utilizing that information in around the industries that we serve can inform us as well about the risk and rewards of lending or leasing into a company or their industry. So
yeah, bots and Reddit users, right? That's what's making the trades.
Exactly.
Right.
I should mention there's a few very happy billionaires and a lot of very upset people right now about Reddit.
No doubt, no doubt. We should all, yeah. Anyway,
I missed
I'll leave
that.
trading
I
advice
missed
to
that
somebody
opportunity,
else.
by the way.
Angelina, you in your presentation, you talked a bit about using big data for lead generation, and we've lived in this new world. I mean, it's coming up on a year that I'll be working from home, March 16th. I know the day. So, but despite all of that, we've still had to grow our businesses, and I know Amur has done well, and we've really seen the entire industry do pretty well through this pandemic. But you still need to generate that top of funnel growth. So how do you do that without going out and meeting people face to face? So what technologies have you seen help support new business acquisition, even in this remote work environment?
So I would start by saying, with COVID and all this new pandemic that we have, faced since 2020, what we have done as a company already is that, first of all, we have this unified communication system. Like we are on Zoom right now, we have this webinar going on. Communication has not been a problem, right? So if it's about communication to be effective to get a business, that is in play. But then when I want to touch a little bit more on how to generate leads with this whole, it will help with the explanation. So let's say that you have a marketing strategy, that you have deployed a campaign, and then you also have a CRM tool, okay? I hope we all understand. Yeah, CRM tools where you have a lot of,
like Salesforce.
Correct. Yeah. Salesforce. Yeah. So you have all this information in your Salesforce, but then, well, there's a customer name here, there's a business name here. What are these information to you, right? It's up to us to actually understand the pattern of what the customer does on our website to be able to approach them in a timely manner. So let's say we have a customer A on our system. Well, they leased the equipment with us about 2 years ago. We see that data is historical, but then every 5 minutes we see that he come on the website. What exactly does he want? Once we understand all that information, we'll be able to approach them and understand that, well, this is the new strategy, this is the new tool, this is the new service we can provide to you. So this lead generation from predictive analytics can help us to know what is the next recommendation to our customer, reach them in time, understand their needs, and provide that service. That is the way that we would utilize our data to achieve this.
Well, I'm going to follow on with that question. So you go out, you use your predictive analytics, you watch, people's, patterns of coming onto the website. You look at what they're looking at. I know this because we do the same. You're monitoring, that activity, and now you get somebody who's, you've engaged, and now they're applying. So I'm gonna ask Paul Fogel's question on credit underwriting, right? We're making that transition. So Angelina, if I'm going to just read it out here. We have a desperate data and want to assemble to improve our underwriting predictability models. It would be a significant investment to get all the data into usable form, and we want to be strategic in how we tackle. Do you have any recommendations on how to get from point A to point B? Do they hire a consulting firm? Do they come hire you? I shouldn't say that. Do they hire a data scientist? What would you, how would you give them advice on this whole process of making credit writing far more efficient?
Yeah, to be very effective, it depends on the size of your company to start with. Let's say you're a big company, you can afford certain things, or you're a smaller company, you have a target or a budget to reach. As a smaller company, maybe you want to start by hiring a consultant, see how it works. If it works, then you want to invest more into it, correct? So you don't want to go into something that you don't fully understand or not prepared for yet. So I would say that for most companies that are not really into machine learning, AI, and other stuff like that, you want to hire somebody that has the expertise. It will help you to get to the goal quickly, rather than hiring somebody, having somebody in-house. That is because it comes to so many things. You need to understand your industry. You need to understand what you actually are hoping to achieve. Or understanding the industry is key with machine learning, because what are you trying to do if you don't even understand what you want to do? You get the point. So I would say hire somebody has expertise in the technology part. Then your company can give the I would say the company knowledge or the business knowledge. So you hire an expert with the technology tools and the understanding, then the business will give them the business insight. Coming together like that will help you to come up with some tool very fast and effective. Then once you see how it works, you want to have more people, like a team. You have a data scientist in your team, go ahead and hire. It's time to do that. But
Yeah.
first, you want to see it work first.
Yeah, that's great advice. Just to the audience, there are fantastic questions coming in. Please keep them coming in. We'll work them into the dialogue. Would love to hear from more of you. While we transition, I'm going to continue asking questions, but Blair, can we run that third poll question that we have? So there'll be a third polling question that pops up here. Here we go. And just, again, we're looking at what's your view of digital technology. So please take a moment and signal your vote. So while we're doing that, Eldon, I'm going to come back to you on business models. One of the things that we've seen as part of the pandemic is having to rethink business, right? And it's more than just Zoom. It's how do people consume technology? What do they use that technology for? I think you mentioned IoT. Thinking of the amount of data coming off of equipment right now, how does that play into reshaping business models? IoT, you can use utilization. I know exactly how long you're on the tractor, right? And or how long that truck is on the road. So is there technologies in place that are reshaping the business models that we're seeing in the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the combination of the digital transformation when it comes to interacting with our customers, right? It really has us rethinking how do we keep that engagement and keep that relevant, particularly right now while we have little face-to-face contact. So they're definitely seeing a lot of technology from that front to the huge use of data, which you have to do when you're sitting far apart, right? It's when you can't just go take your client out to lunch and have a discussion and do business together. It has to be through these other engagements. So that's that also we see a push for more mobile and mobile enablement, because we sit in front of a computer screen long enough and we get enough mailboxes. So we're looking for, what are the other ways? How do we make it as easy as possible for our customers to engage? So I think that's a big part of it. And then when it comes to the overall impact to models. So we've talked about IoT and some of the things that it can do, but all of these are really basically pushing us into an era where the winners are the ones who can most effectively leverage the data. Right, it's there, it's advantageous in a lot of cases, and it's becoming more accessible. And so when it comes to, how do we structure our company? How do our operations work with that? It really has to incorporate to a larger degree what's the flow of data in our organization to our decision makers, right? And how do we make sure that they've got the right data? How do we help them? How do we augment their human ability, right, and to consume this? So we're definitely seeing a lot of that. One of the trends that I hear about is the composable enterprise, and that's only available when you've got a data-oriented organization, and then you can compose your operations and such on that. So anyway, so yes, we are seeing drive from that, but it does come back to the trends that we started the call with.
Yeah. Well, we're going to transition now into our networking portion of the webinar, where we have the opportunity just to hear from some in the audience. We didn't get through all of our questions. We can continue down that path, but it's for us, we definitely want to hear from you. And I'm gonna throw a question out there to the audience just to see if we can't get some conversation started. And it's one that I was planning to ask the panelists, but I think this is good to hear from the broader group here. So there's an incredible amount of data that's out there and available to us. How do is there somebody who wants to share how they could use data to improve your customer experience? I see a couple of friendly faces that I'm going to call on if I don't hear a good answer pretty soon. So anyone from the audience want to share?
This is Rick from North Star Leasing. I'm happy to share how we use some data. So
that's great, Rick. I was going to call on you. That's the.
I figured I'd get ahead of the game because I knew you looked right at me. So one of the analysis we're constantly doing is analyzing two things, actually. One is how many of our existing customers that we have financed in the past have come forward again, and being able to manipulate the data and understand the percentage of customers that return to us is very critical, especially when we're marketing to those customers and trying to analyze, are we being successful or not? So I can tell you exactly that 38.5% of our existing customers last year funded equipment with us from years prior. The other piece of data that's really interesting is, well, how many of those customers have come back a second time or a third time or a fourth time? And to be able to manipulate that data and be able to target that audience is really critical. The other piece that's really good at marketing to your existing customer base, which we try to do, is pulling out the data and saying, okay, those customers that we funded the transactions with that have a credit score greater than 680, who have been in business for 2+ years, and other particular data that you might consider, making a specific targeted piece to them saying, you're already approved for at least $50,000. Give us a call. What do you need? So Ray, those are the two pieces that we, just example of some of the ways in which we go after our existing customer base. And without the data, we'd be blind.
Yeah, that fantastic marketing tactic of pre-approval, right?
Yep.
Definitely a motivator. So, others from the audience, are there any things that you're using to improve customer experience? Rick, that was a great example. Really appreciate you sharing.
You're welcome.
All right, well, we'll move on to another question, if that one is a little too sensitive. So one of the things that we've seen come out of places like the Equipment Lease Finance Foundation, the LFF, they've published a lot of research recently, but they've been talking a lot about asset classes and, which asset classes have seen the biggest amount of growth in the last year, and, will continue to go forward. Does anybody want to share from their experience, asset classes that you think are showing a lot more progress than others? And the dead last was printing. So I can imagine anything that's office imaging is struggling right now, based upon people working from home. The number one was construction, which, so that's the disparity. Any others want to share on, what you're seeing out there in the marketplace on the asset classes that are showing signs of real positive signs of momentum? Anybody from the audience? Chad, you got some insight here?
I don't necessarily, but I think, yeah, if anyone else from the audience wishes to jump in, this is intended to be a roundtable networking, so feel free to share your insight. I think there's an opportunity for everyone to learn from you, so don't be shy.
Yeah.
Mike Morzak, are you on still? I see you there. I'm just going to call on people. We'll just see if people can share some things with us.
Hey, this is Rick. Two areas that we've seen some pretty significant growth. One is in landscaping.
Wow.
Okay. Because if you think about that audience, we're all staying home longer, so we're tending to spend more money on our homes. And so landscaping has gone up. And the other one that's really interesting is plumbing. Plumbers are backlogged because we're staying home more and clogging up our toilets and our pipes, I guess. So we're seeing a significant, not a significant growth, but we're seeing a growth up there. Certainly restaurants taking a serious negative hit. And we do quite a bit of business in the restaurant industry. And I think another one that's potentially going to show some growth in the coming 12 to 24 months is security equipment. So companies that are installing security equipment in businesses, that could be significant.
Yeah, and I think construction. The leading on to that thought process. One of the things that we've seen, why I think construction is booming is the retrofitting of offices to be more socially distanced. We've seen a lot of examples of where people are trying to anticipate how to get back in, and they're either changing their space or moving to new spaces, and then with the understanding that space has to be different than it was before. I see Scott Wheeler can't unmute himself, and it looks like you're unmuted on my end.
Scott Wheeler needs to go through a training seminar for data.
Oh, he just posted, Ray.
Yeah. He says, I see many companies digging deeper into their niches. Not only that construction is up, but they are drilling further and finding niches within niches. Yeah, that's interesting. And, I think that, as Rick said, landscaping is definitely a niche, and plumbing that surprises me. I won't add the follow-on commentary there, but it's those are definitely interesting areas. As we think about where we're at within this year, where it's February, we're starting for many a calendar fiscal year. We asked some polling questions about what do you see as volumes. We're 1 month in, and not that we want anybody to share competitive information, but I'm going to ask a feeling question because I'm a marketing guy. What's the feeling of the business and how you're interacting with your customers? Do you see that optimism coming back into play within the marketplace?
Ray, this is Rick. We're seeing a positive energy that the marketplace is wanting to open, but they're doing it with a level of conservatism.
Yeah.
So we have customers that come to us, ask us if we can get them approved. We get them approved and they say, great, but we're going to hold for 2 more months before we pull the trigger, or 3 more months before we pull the trigger. So we're seeing that the doors are opening. We had a fantastic fourth quarter. And in December, we set a record for the company in its history. So that was all great. Definitely was a lot of pent up demand there. And we feel confident that 2021 is going to be a positive year. It's also exciting. One of the things I keep track of is the COVID map. And for the first time in a long time, the number of new COVID cases in the United States has actually dropped by 45% since January, I think it was 4th. So a combination of maybe we're starting to, someone said, I think on CNN, maybe we're getting close to herd immunity, but we're also getting the vaccines out, but certainly nowhere near fast enough. So as you get that going, begins to build excitement, I think, in the marketplace. And if the government can just hurry up and get some additional funds out, I think the floodgates will just open.
Yeah, I mean, the whole, stimulus packages. I mean, it was good that the government did, work early on, but that has to continue on till we get through all this. I definitely agree with your point there. And Scott also agrees with the cautiously optimistic sentiment that you're sharing, Rick, that we're seing that, we're in our business with customers now, we're providing technology to people like Rick, who is a fantastic customer. But we're seeing that same sort of optimism, and it's cautious. It's, but there is this sense of investing through as opposed to staying back on the sideline. Are you seeing that type of concept of investing through the downturn, flattening the curve, if you will? Mike, since you're back, you want to answer that question?
I am back. So I was working on some emails here. Can you repeat the question? Standard kid in the back of the classroom.
No problem. I'm just, do you see companies wanting to invest through this challenging time? That they're looking at it not as a hold back, and even though we're seeing cautious optimism, is there still investment going into asset classes or into new innovations for people to get through the pandemic?
Sure. So I'm a servicer, so I'm not sure I'm going to be able to speak to you guys on the level that you guys are working on here. I was just talking to Chad, but we're seeing a lot of our clients, jumping in and taking the idea of, progressing through innovation and technology a lot more seriously. Sean Smith here at Dedicated is on the board of NEFA, and he's been a big proponent of, getting something as simple as DocuSign across the equipment finance industry. And so I know he's talked about just the industry as a whole being a lot more receptive to that during the pandemic and people being remote. So I think you'll continue to see that, just from a newbie's perspective. But at least that's my 2 cents I could add to the equation here.
I appreciate the response, and you bring up a good point. I mean, one of the things that we've seen in the industry as a whole, I mean, how long has it taken for us to get off wet signature into digital signature? And for many, there was I remember I was hosting another dialogue like this about, I'd say, June of this past year, and there was a large bank on the call, and the person who had answered the question said, yeah, we implemented a digital signature solution like DocuSign, but they were saying, but we only took a temporary license because as soon as this is over, we're going to go back to wet signature. And I'm just thinking, wait, we're missing the point here. I mean, the point is that makes it easier for the customer, right? These innovations, the the big point of everything we've talked about today, the big point of it is to really make that process more efficient and easy for the customer to be able to, originate a loan or a lease and to go through the credit writing and adjudication and all those steps and make it simpler and frictionless. And so I think that we're going to see that those investments in technology will carry forward, into the future. Some of the research I've seen says that we've accelerated the technology adoption curve by somewhere between 3 and 5 years, simply because of being forced into that position. So,
hey Ray, I
Yeah.
would just hop in real quick to piggyback off what Mike said. I think it's adapt or die in a lot of ways. The new age is coming. Technology is going to move at a lot faster rate. Dedicated is investing heavily in AI, and actually a sister company that will be launching here hopefully later this year. But if your data is not correct going into the equation, it's going to come up. It's going to mess the whole thing up, right? So we operate off Azure. We're working directly with Microsoft and trying to apply for a grant with their program, so that they'll actually have people help us build that out, right? So we're absolutely utilizing that data, and if we can come to our clients and say, here's every data on every SIC code, on every default, against tens of thousands of accounts. And our competition is still just saying, well, we have an auto dialer, right? Not only can we service our clients better with real data, but it's going to be a leg up. And to your point, where, in a recent article I wrote, I was giving props to some of the attorneys that have been pushing DocuSign for years, and it was like pulling teeth. There's just so much in this industry of, this is the way we've always done it, and we're just going to keep doing it that way, and we're going to force to be changed. And you're going to watch the companies that invest now, then understand that technology moves so much faster, and they're going to get absolutely annihilated. And you're already seeing that with a lot of fintech companies and how much this industry has lost to other funding source styles because of its unwillingness to adapt. So everything that's been said on this call is not only important, but it needs to be on the forefront, in my opinion, of everyone, whether you're a service provider, you're a funding source, whatever that is. So I just, kudos to everyone being on here, and I can't advocate enough that you have to get your data correct. It's got to be stored correctly. You've got to be able to utilize it, implement it, and have that be an integral part to your business moving forward.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. That's the great points. I mean, I can start and almost finish a mortgage for my home on my phone, but trying to get a small business loan is just it. They're just disparity in the experience that you might have working with different institutions. So,
Ray, this is Chad. I'm just going to jump in for a moment, because we have a handful of our board members on with us. And I think the group should understand that this board has been very cognizant of pivoting the organization and trying to offer more value. And our staff is working very hard to move in that direction. And it'll take some time, but we don't want to just be a conference-only organization. We're trying to offer more value to you, our members, through conferences, virtual conferences like this. We're investing in a new Salesforce product that is going to have a community and an LMS system, so we can load up all sorts of content and have tools there for you as a repository to take advantage of. That'll be coming in the next couple of months. So there's a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes that you're not aware of just now, but soon we're going to be pushing out an executive summary of our business plan that maps out sort of the plan that we have launching this year, what we're trying to do for you. And in between our major conferences, we're going to offer a lot more value. We're also looking to launch, Paul Fogel has a little test pilot group that he's going with right now that will allow small groups of our members to get together for networking and idea sharing. So those are just the things that our team is working on for you. And one ask that I have is, if you have any ideas on what NEFA can do for you that may be missing, share those with us, because we're looking for new ideas. We're looking to try and offer more value to you. And Paul's idea came up during our planning session last month, and he pushed a note out, and we have about 20 broker lessor members that are looking to jump on a call in the next couple of weeks just for an idea sharing session. There's no reason why we can't do that across the board and have much smaller groups working within the organization. And you'll see next month at our finance summit as well that we have 4 different tracks lined up, and we're creating a lot of networking time over those 2 days. Unfortunately, we can't get together in person, but we're doing the best we can with this virtual summit. So I just encourage everyone to continue to participate, continue to take advantage of these opportunities, because we're trying to move in that direction to offer value, not just to the C-suite within the organization, but to every level within our membership companies, I should say.
Yeah, Chad, and I think this is a great example. These types of informative sessions, and the great information that comes out of the membership that can be shared across the board. So we certainly appreciate the effort that you're putting in, appreciate the organization as a whole, and certainly appreciate that you're embracing this concept of how do you leverage technology to the best of its ability so that it can advance that, the rising tide lifts all boats, but bringing that knowledge to the group and to the industry to allow us to have these kind of sharing experiences. So I certainly appreciate it. IDS appreciates it, and have appreciated our time today. We just have a few minutes left. So I do want to say thank you to Angelina and to Eldon for their presentations. I thought they were fantastic and really valuable information. And I want to thank everybody who has chimed in with questions. And I'll just hand it back over to you, Chad.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Ray, Eldon, Angelina. Thanks again for a great presentation. This is very informative. Just so everyone knows, every month, the first Tuesday of the month at 1 Eastern, outside of March and October when we have our conferences, we'll be having these sessions. 60 minutes of programming, 30 minutes of networking. So again, if you have ideas on a program or a topic, send those over to us. We're working with our education committee to organize these into something that's informative and you have takeaways. So with that, thanks again, everyone. I think we're ready to wrap up unless anyone has any final questions. Okay, thanks again.